Squats, the ultimate strength test for your lower body. So also a great exercise to build bigger legs and get stronger for your sport. So if you can master this exercise, you have the ultimate tool to get bigger and stronger legs. So in this tutorial, we'll look at 3 things: the setup, the descent, and the ascent. And in the ascent, we'll look at the 2 most common mistakes why you miss a squat. The first thing we'll look at is the bar placement. So in powerlifting, you can choose between a high bar placement or a low bar placement. So the high bar placement is when you place the bar up, sitting on your traps, whilst the low bar placement is when you place the bar further down on your back, sitting sort of in the mid region of your traps and resting a bit on the back of your shoulders. Most competitive powerlifters use the low bar placement because this puts you in a more biomechanically advantageous position. However, some lifters, for example if you have very short femurs and you can squat really upright, might actually benefit from the high bar position. But I would recommend most lifters to try the low bar placement because that's where most lifters can get the most weight on the bar. So when you've picked your bar placement, the next thing we'll look at is the hand position. So in principle, you want to grip as tight as possible that's still comfortable for your elbows and wrists. The next thing we'll look at is the elbow position. A good cue for a good elbow position is trying to touch your rib cage with your elbows. This creates some tension in the upper back, which makes the bar sit more stable on the back and gets you more stability for the squat overall. Some lifters, however, might have a slight angle out from the body with the elbows, and this is in order to create a bit more solid shelf for the bar to sit on, usually in a low bar position. However, you should avoid having your elbows up too high, because that usually makes the lifter push the bar up towards the neck and can make the lifter lose balance, and the squat can start to look like a good morning instead of a squat. So now we have the bar in a solid position at your back, and it's time to lift off the weight and walk out. So the first thing you need to do is place your feet directly under the bar. Then create tension in your upper back and brace and lift the bar vertically up before you start walking out. And the actual walkout, it's good to keep a 3-step rule. So the first step is just to clear the rack a bit, and the second and third step is to find your stance. So when it comes to stance, it's highly individual in which stance you can squat the most weights. So you have all from a bit more narrower stance with your feet facing a bit more forward. And this is usually better for lifters with really strong quads, really strong legs, and with short femurs and a long upper body. So this is usually the body types that have a narrower stance in the squat. The most typical stance is slightly wider than shoulder width and having your knees and toes pointing out roughly 20 to 30 degrees from the body. So this stance is the most common stance you see powerlifters go with. And then we have the wider stance. And this is usually for lifters that has really long femurs or short upper bodies. They tend to have a problem finding depth in these narrower stances. So having a wider stance usually helps them to find better position and easier get to a competition approved depth. So now you have gotten out with the bar to the starting position, and before you squat you have to brace. So bracing is something you see a lot of lifters do wrong. A lot of lifters try to flex their abs or stand up too straight instead of actually bracing into the core. So in order to do a proper brace, you should focus on breathing down into your belly and getting tension all around your core, not just in your abs but also in your sides and your back. So you should become compact in your core. A good cue here is try to align your rib cage and get it as close to your pelvis as possible whilst getting the tension all around your core. So things you should avoid is breathing up too much into your chest and lifting the bar up whilst you brace. You should focus on breathing down into belly and becoming compact and one with the bar. So now it's time to actually perform the squat. And there are two good cues you can try to get a good descent in the squat. The first one is sitting straight down. And basically you brace and you focus on sitting straight down. And the second one is sitting back in the squat. So basically you brace and you start with your hips and start by sitting back. And which one is best is up to you. Try both of these cues and see which one works best for you. So the other thing to think about in the descent is how fast you go. So generally it's quite good to have a bit of speed in descent because that triggers the stretch reflex and gives you some bounce out of the hole. But you can't go too fast because that will make you lose control and stability. So basically you should go as fast as you can still control and get a good, consistent, repetitive squat in. So next question you might ask yourself is, how deep should I squat? And this video is intended for powerlifters. And in powerlifting we have a rule that says that you must squat so that your hip crease is lower than the top of your knee joint. So this is how that looks like. So this is a below parallel squat. So some lifters may have problem reaching this depth. And there are usually two reasons I see lifters miss on depths. It's either because they push their knees too far forward, and in that case they might focus on the cue of starting the descent by sitting back more. They might also try a bit wider stance. The other reason is that lifters sit basically too far back. They do all of the work with their hips instead of bending their knees. And vice versa, they can try the cue of trying to sit more straight down in the descent. Then it's time for the actually big challenge in the squat, standing back up. Naturally, most lifters have their sticking point slightly above parallel. So the speed pattern of a heavy squat, it's usually that you get a bit of a bounce out of the hole and it gets a bit slower above parallel, and then when you're getting close to the lockout, you can accelerate the bar again. So basically what you want to do in the ascent is set yourself up to be able to drive through this heavy sticking point that's a bit above parallel. So how you do that is basically you want to drive up vertically into the bar from the reversal in the hole of the squat. And then when you get to the sticking point, you want to drive your hips forward and push your back up into the bar. So you want to extend your hips and get that power up into the bar. So there's usually two mistakes you see when lifters is trying to get up in a squat. The first one is that you have your balance too far forward. So basically what this leads to is when you get to this heavy sticking point, your balance is too far forward and you can't get the hip drive into the bar. So the second reason you see people failing their squats is that their bums shoot up too fast. And that places you in an unfavorable position when trying to drive your hips through in the sticking point. If that happens to you, you should likely focus on driving a bit more vertically up into the bar from the hole. And you may also need to strengthen your quads. So let's summarize how to do a good squat for powerlifting. First of all, you should find your bar placement, hand position and elbow position that makes the bar sit very stable on the back. Then get vertically under the bar before you lift it off the rack. Brace and do a 3-step walkout to get into position. Then brace again and use the cue of either sitting back or sitting down to reach the depth in the squat. When trying to get up, push vertically into the bar, and when you get to the sticking point, be aggressive with driving your hip through and pushing your upper back into the bar. So if you follow this tutorial, you learn how to lift with proper technique for powerlifting and to get strong and safe lifts in. Please also have a look at my other lifting tutorials and download the AE Power app. If you want to follow me on social media, My name is AE Power on Instagram.